Greetings, my name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, licensed presenters, the Core New Core, my patrons, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor or student. So on Facebook yesterday, I got into a fascinating discussion that leads off with my number one title today. We were discussing what is it? What is it? Because I got commentary about, well, you can't teach it unless you can do it in your own. You can't teach it unless you can do it. You shouldn't teach it unless you can do it. And I wonder what the it matters to there or refers to there. But let's just say the exercise, the movement. It really helps to how well you actually can do the movement, if at all, in your own body, to understand what you're after overall, regardless of your individual limitations. And in that understanding, I can only tell you that I've been lucky to have students that were way more capable than I was in their body and in their mind and in their spirit. It's not the extent of those capacities that matter so much in pursuing Pilates or teaching it or instructing it as the coordination of those capacities. Yeah. So, for a moment, can't do it. If you can't actually do the exercise physically, it's really tough. You're reaching a long way to ask a student to go somewhere. So I agree. It's best to only show what you know in your own body, but when what you're doing is, when you're working with a body that's beyond yours, you have to be all the more aware of your understanding of loading, so that you can help. See, it's a tough one, but that's a discussion of it. You should not teach it until you can do it. You know, I have to admit I break that rule on occasion, where the occasion is called for. But definitely, the more capable you are in your own body, the more capable you are, and the more sympathetic you are to what's involved in the effort or the exercise that you're instructing. Then, on the other it, in terms of whether or not a person, they go to school, they go to a training, and you hear a lot whether or not they have it in their body. What is it? And because, to me, Pilates is movement, you know, nothing's really happening in any way, shape, or form that would be the embodiment of Pilates without movement happening. And so you have to have it in your movement, I think, might be a better way to express that, because it's not just, well, but see, it is in your body. In MMP, it's your being, your thinking, and your observing. And that's your being, what you have as your being, your body, what you have as your thinking, prefrontal cortex up in here, and what you have back here in your amygdala and hippocampal areas of the brain that feed information into the brain as to what's going on out there. Right? Plugged into the outside world, listening, observing, connecting to what's happening out there. Do they have that in their, do they have it in their body when they move? A large part of the Pilates culture, knowingly or not, want it to remain undefinable. Meaning that whatever it is undefinable, unexplainable. And that it's personally determined, it's subjective, like it can only be handed down from those who have gotten a sense of it again, through what they've learned through their tradition, and that whatever it is unexplainable and only can be passed on as a mystery to what it really is. But you sign a certificate, then you're saying, evidently, supposedly, that they have it in their body. What is it? It would be nice if Pilates could stay on the foundation that it took off of the principles selected by the authors 13 years after Joe died. It would be nice to stay in that realm of principles, and beyond that it's all subjective. It would be nice. I mean, there would be no it to it, I think is the point I'm making, is that if it's unexplainable and undefinable, and if it is something that only is handed down through lineage, right? To where whatever it is can only be handed down that way, okay, that will be part of the culture, closely located to historical reenactors, but not the body, not the huge population of the Pilates culture, in my opinion. It just can't go on as the aristocratically held mystery that can only be handed down that way. Look at what's happened due to the presumption that there is no it to it. Pilates has no essence of its own. And yet always you hear about, you ought to have it in your body before you try to teach somebody else. And if you don't have it in, and if you can't display it in your body, you really can't do it. What is it? That's my question. What is it? And then that's where I would point out that MMP is just one point of view out of a lot of other points of view, right? It's distinct, it's unique still, I think, and certainly transcendent for the times that this point of view came out in. A point of view dominated by principles the MMP POV is a theory that there's an ideal within Joe's original work. There's an essence to it. And MMP thinks that essence is ideal in nature. And nature being reality as well. Sometimes I want to say ideal in reality. The human being, the human body, the human being, not just the body, but the human being's response to the situation it finds itself in, and seeking to prepare in order to be ready for whatever comes up. How do I most concisely condition myself through choosing a routine to perform, and in performing that routine, exercises without stopping, flowing, right? Flowing through. And so the it. My notes say that the explanation robs you of arbitrarily determining what it is, or subjectively determining what it is. An explanation takes away from you the unknowable, unexplainable, point of view of Pilates. That's what an explanation does. It robs you of making of it whatever you want. But it gives you a level playing field. It gives you a level playing field by identifying the bedrock of Pilates for what it is. Everything stays in place, all the aristocracy, who you are and who you knew and when you knew it, except that there's an explanation now that more clearly explains what it is we've all been attracted to. And that's just one point of view out of many, but it's an explanation. And just by its very essence of being an explanation, it takes you beyond principles and beyond that the unknowable, and therefore the individually and subjectively determined, to where it depends on who you talk to or what your understanding of it is, or your recognition of it. So an explanation robs you of being subjective, but it gives you a level playing field, to where a lot of people that start talking about it that don't have any idea or how to explain it and prefer to leave it unexplainable. That's, I think, just part of the culture, and it's part of human nature. But recognize, for me, I urge you to recognize that's a sinister cesspool of quicksand intentions, which takes me back to, I think maybe, I'm trying to say that it is unknowable to a certain extent, depending on what level or layer or depth you get to with it. And the assumption that there is something to get to. Now, having said all of that, I encourage you to clearly understand the MMP point of view, to make use of in whatever way you wish. But the clarity of your understanding of that point of view will give you a point of reference for whatever other points of view are out there. Even interpretations of MMP. Oh yeah, I studied with somebody, I took a workshop from him, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, last year. And I absorbed everything he had to say, and there really wasn't much there. Human nature. That takes me to Galileo, I guess. Oh, but the point I wanted to make is that for whatever other points of view are out there, Recognize MMP is an ideal POV based on 3 things right out of Joe's book. And from within the MMP POV, see, and my point is, whatever you hear out there in terms of points of view that you assimilate into your own, or are challenged to, or threatened to, know that from the MMP point of view, Pilates has an essence of its own. And the it, and then right in there now, I can at least give you a presentation of what that's about for $10 for 10 minutes. And everybody in the sales world knows that once that's presented as information or an offer, the notification that you can make an explanation for this much money that lasts this long, the next person that speaks loses. So recognize, once you've delivered your pitch to make a presentation, don't go beyond that. No response, nothing, then, let it go. Let it go. My suggestion is that in indulging in or coming from not having it be explained and wanting it to stay that way, is you can't protect the world that we're evolving into, because understanding and understanding seeks explanation. And in MMP there's a solid explanation that you may hate and loathe and want no part of, because it is so beyond or outside of the common culture of Pilates that assumes the tradition. But that whole point of view, I think, you call it like Pilates without explanation, is a world and a culture that's already seriously into being gone with the wind, gone with the tsunami. So it was a fun discussion about what it is, what does it matter, and in who I talked with yesterday gave me a real connection. Who was watching in the audience yesterday gave me a real connection to the whole lifetime of being exposed to Pilates and having it be precious to you, and wanting it to stay precious in the midst of such diverse representation of it, as though it, has no essence of its own. That's always a great spectrum to bring up in your own mind, and to me, in talking to you, there's a spectrum. And it's just an attitude or a point of view that Pilates has an essence of its own, that's one end, and Pilates has no essence of its own, and that's the other end. Number 2, spotting. Throughout my time acting as an instructor with a student, so a private session where I'm in the position to participate as an instructor, and and part of the cueing bleeds over into spotting, where spotting is where you make contact with your student, influencing the load that they're under in their pursuit of the movement that they're after. High bridge on the reformer. Many want to try to just be in the position up there without having the actual ability to get there. And I hear a whole part of the chorus raise up and say, if they can't raise up to get there on their own, they have no right to be there up there on their own. Yeah. When you're an instructor, when I'm an instructor, I'm there to facilitate their self-discovery, their explanation of their own capabilities. It's my job to make sure they don't exceed the capabilities, their capabilities. And because I'm strong and I can offer spotting that is load-bearing. And so maybe that's a whole category within spotting. You can just make a contact point of some way, and like reach out for my fingers and then barely touch fingers to fingers is like a spotting contact point thing. But another spotting contact point I use such an extreme example, and now a more moderate one doesn't come to mind. But spotting, gosh. The ice skating rink comes to mind, and that when you when you teach a lesson, you pick your student up on the ice, the edge of the ice, where it's the thickest, frozen, right? And you move around on thick ice, and until you have control with the ice that thick, and then you skate out onto thinner ice, right? And maybe the ice is control, but a lot of it has to do with maintaining uniform engagement. So there's subjective and arbitrary and unexplainable, only transferable through lineage. And that's okay, that's a point of view, but it's not the point of view that I'm trying to familiarize you with. The point of view I'm trying to familiarize you with is something that can be understood and implemented and controlled, because it's an explanation that you can actually comprehend, prehensile, that you can get or take in hand. And do what? Pursue the method on your own, or pursue it, help someone else pursue it as well. So my closing remarks are, allow anyone their point of view. It's not about defending a point of view, right? I think it's about how clearly you can represent the point of view that you're coming from. All the individuals out there, they decide what makes sense to them. All you can do is try to be as clear as you can about what you're broadcasting, what you're transferring in terms of a point of view. Do it while you can, when you can, because life can't live forever. Read between the lines and see behind the curtain. Add 2 and 2. Connect the dots. And in so doing, evaluate points of view. And from that evaluation, have an understanding of the distinction between the broad-based cultural common knowledge of Pilates as being unexplained and based on principles, and the rarity of someone that has an explanation of Pilates that's outside of that common point of view. You're here, you make an offer like I did, $10, 10 minutes, to get an explanation of CT and PO and MMP. You might go 2 steps further. Well, what is that? Well, CT is about biomechanics, and that surely will throw off almost everybody. And MMP is one point of view of Pilates. And everybody's heard of Pilates and could care less. But so that's a huge filtering of if anybody's interested. And what you've done is give a general explanation of what those 2 acronyms, CT and MMP, are about. Okay? And really, that's what it's about, to make the presentation. If you don't want the presentation, which is an explanation of a further explanation of those 2 things, then let's talk about something else. Or we can talk about whatever else you want to, but I have nothing further to say about what's in my presentation. There you go. I like those words. I have nothing further to say about what's in my presentation. So without getting paid for it, I'm not giving it away for free. And that's the add 2 and 2. In my mind, it's what matters most. And to me, what matters most is delivering value to your student and whatever else beyond that, right? But in that session you have with a student, who's been teaching forever and has their own school and training program and makes their own equipment, and what value do you transfer? And to me, that brings me back to what is it? There's a lot of people that know more about anatomy than I do, but their knowing about anatomy doesn't put them in a superior position to understanding what it is about Pilates that makes it unique. See, you want to keep it undefined and unknowable because of how subjectively malleable that is. But you can't really protect yourself and Pilates without acknowledging that it has an essence of its own, so that it doesn't get made into all of the whatever it is that's out there. In MMP, I think that it is a way of moving through the mat. It's a way of moving through choreographed movement. So maybe it's participation in choreography. It's moving. And then the it that is part of that is knowing how to perform the mat or a sequence in flow, right? A sequence that is progressive and it's loading. It comes out from center, right? It evolves through patterns, through planes of movement. Thanks for listening. Direct your thinking.